when the family feuds. If you've ever heard this phrase before, feel free to finish it with me. I brought you into this world It's the type of phrase you hear parents say to their children on movies and television shows. Depending on your own upbringing, maybe someone said it to you. I'm not here to debate the matters child rearing and parental responsibility, but I do believe this saying is very instructive for us. The older I get, the more I reflect on the things that parents say to children. It's been said that the best childhood is one that you don't have to recover from. Therapy would suggest that we're all recovering from something. And the longer I live, the more I recognize how our spoken words are not visible, but they linger and they carry weight. A small word of encouragement can lift a child's spirits. An offhand remark can cut like the sharpest knife. I brought you into this world and I will take you out of it. The first half is a reminder that your life is a gift. It's a suggestion that you ought to be grateful to be alive. Because someone, whether by intention or by accident, undertook the process that brought you into this human experience. The second half is a threat, or perhaps a promise. It's a statement of power and the potential to punish. I gave you life, and I can take it away. Ask yourself what motivates that kind of language. See, I believe that any honorable, well-meaning parent only wants what is best for their child. Now, I'm not a parent, but I know plenty of them. I know that sometimes the trouble is thick and your patience is thin. Somebody understands. I know that sometimes the mouth speaks before the brain catches up. This goes for children and adults. I know that children can find your last nerve and cha-cha slide all over. I know that sometimes people reach a breaking point and we say hard things, mean things, brutal things that we may not mean, but because we are frustrated by the distance, by the disconnection, we lose our compassion when we've lost compliance and control. We are fearful of what happens when things get chaotic. Now, some of you have been the parent. Some of us have been the child. But all of us know that nobody wins when the family feuds. Exodus 32 is a window into a family feud. God, Moses, the Israelites have been on the longest road trip in recorded biblical history. Anybody ever spent a few hours in the car with your family? If you have, you understand it can be difficult. Try 40 years in a wilderness. It's one thing to make a drive from your house to your family reunion. It's another thing to make the journey from lockdown to liberation. Because sometimes your body gets free before your mind and your spirit do. Sometimes we get frustrated waiting for them to catch up. The God of Exodus 32 is waiting for the minds and the spirits of the children to catch up. The God of Exodus 32 is fed up. I gave you hope, and I can replace it with despair. The God of Exodus 32 sounds like a parent at the end of their day and the end of their rope. I gave you freedom and I can strip it from you. I brought you out of bondage and I can break your spirit. I delivered you out of Egypt and I can destroy you just as easily. God is saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because it's hard work handling the children of Israel. I love that the people are often referred to as the children of Israel because it reminds me of the way that young people require a different sort of care and attention. The children don't walk at the same pace that you do. They don't always have the focus or the attention that we desire. They may wander off instead of holding on to your hand. Children ask why when we just want them to say yes. Children often get into trouble when they're left unsupervised. See, it's not that children don't know what to do. Sometimes they struggle to stay on task. Now, I know I'm not talking about anybody in this room, but sometimes it's hard to stay on task. If we look back to the earlier stages of Exodus, the 24th chapter shows us an instance of the people offering burnt sacrifices of oxen. They know what worship is. They know what they've been commanded to do. They have done it before, but in the moment that they are left unsupervised, left uncertain, wondering where the deliverer in the form of Moses is going and when he's coming back and what they will do in the meantime, things fall apart. They do like some kids do. You know, when your parents won't give you the thing you're looking for, you go to your uncle, to your aunts, to your grandparents. The children of Israel go to Uncle Aaron and say, Uncle Aaron, build us a calf made of gold. You know, because while Moses is gone, we need some place to fix our attention, some place to fix our devotion. The children of Israel have lost sight of what they are meant to do. And it seems to me the problem is less about what the people are doing, because if the narrative of Exodus suggests anything to me, God likes gold. God likes fine jewels. I mean, the construction of the tabernacle is an exercise in seeing that God desires the finer things. If they're worthy of decorating the tabernacle, surely they're worthy of offering our attention, our devotion. I mean, what's so wrong about golden objects? But herein lies the challenge, the struggle. The object is merely symbolic, but they have made it a fixation. They have turned their love and affection towards it. See, worship is the thing that's for God, not for things. This is a portrait of a God who's disgruntled, who's disaffected, who's disappointed because they are doing for themselves what God expects for God's self. God is ready to do what God has done before. Wipe the slate clean, start over. But Moses offers a reminder. Remember your covenant with the children of Israel. The conversation between Moses and God is like the conversations you hear between parents when the children are not quite okay and things are going haywire, and they're trying to decide maybe whose fault it is or what needs to be done or what kind of discipline or punishment ought to be applied. This is a family dispute. And if you've ever overheard your parents arguing or being at odds, you know things can get kind of weird and kind of odd, and you might be off doing your own thing, but you overhear what's being discussed. You know that trouble is brewing. You know there are some problems to be dealt with. But Moses offers this reminder. Remember your covenant with people. Remember your promises to them. Recall their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, how you swore to them by your own self, saying, I will multiply your descendants. Kind of hard to multiply descendants if you're constantly wiping them out. But this circumstance, this conversation reminds me of something very important for our lives. It's easier to react to people's performance than it is to address the roots of their problems. Most of us get angry and reactive and upset with symptoms because it's easier than dealing with the root cause. It'd be easy to dismiss the children of Israel as disobedient, as derelict, as stiff-necked as God calls them. Stiff-necked, that's a quality or characteristic of animals who are yoked up, and when they are being pulled in a certain direction by the yoke, they stiffen their necks because they don't want to move where they're being directed. In other words, God is saying these little animals are out of control and I'm done. I've had it up to here. But we need to ask, where does this come from? Could it be the shifting circumstances of Egypt and the wilderness? Could it be the loss of stability and structure? And for this reason, this is why we don't ask people in difficult situations, why didn't you just leave? Because sometimes circumstances of violence and abuse are terrible, but they're at least familiar. Even if I know I can't always trust you, at least I know you better than this stranger. At least I know this environment. I know the walls and the prisons and the bars and the deep pits of Egypt better than I know the strangeness and unfamiliarity of this wilderness. And I know you've come to liberate me. I know you have come to set me free. But right now, I'm feeling a little separation anxiety. Could it be the traumatic experiences and trust issues that come from having been dominated and kept in bondage? Remember, the time span of Egyptian slavery was far longer than the time span in the wilderness, which means generations and generations of people have been socialized, have been taught to think of themselves as enslaved, have been taught to think of themselves as needing to be dominated and controlled. And so now that they're in a space of liberation and possibility, it's not so easy to just know what to do next. And sometimes crisis leads us back to old familiar habits instead of into liberating promise. The conversation between Moses and God sounds like some of us. See, we talk about our kids differently depending on what they're doing and how we feel. See, sometimes we claim responsibility and other times we create distance. Verse 7, God says to Moses, your people. Funny how when kids are doing well, they're my kids. And when they're doing terribly, they're your kids. Verse 9, God says to Moses, this people. Now, God isn't even claiming them. They're not your kids or my kids. They're just these kids. But Moses reminds God in verse 11, your people. Let me remind you of your reconnection, of your covenant in the midst of your anger, in the midst of your wrath, in the midst of your frustration. Let me remind you of what you said, of what you promised. And finally, by the end, verse 14, they are God's people again. A whole emotional arc has been traveled in the conversation between Moses and God. And where does that leave us? That leaves us, I think, in an instructive place. I'm instructed by the reaction, by the response of God to keep in mind, how do I operate when I'm liberal with my correction and lax with my criticism, but stingy with compassion? It's easy to say what's wrong. It's harder to ask, how do things get better? It's harder to look past my own reactions and say, how do you need me to respond? I'm reminded of a powerful experience I had with children. I went home to Michigan to help my younger sister and her husband move into their new house. And my sister and her husband, they are blessed with 3 wonderful children, 2 little girls and a little boy. And the girls are twins. And you can imagine, if you're trying to do anything with children that young, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of time. Kids are not interested in being focused. Kids are interested in being kids. So I decided to come and help them, not just to physically move things, but to help with the children, to manage. Because, 2 on 3 is, you got to play zone defense. But if you got 3 on 3, man to man. So we were going through the process, and moving in is a challenging and long process. And we were carrying things up the stairs and in the different rooms, getting things situated and organized. And we came to a break in the action. And kids, they get hungry, they want their snacks. So I went to the grocery store and came back with some snacks for the kids and chips in their little baggies. And so my nieces are sitting here munching on their chips. And one of my nieces finishes her bag of chips, takes the bag, empties the crumbs on the floor. And I looked at her and I said, we don't do that. A moment passed, another moment passed, and then the waterworks. My niece screamed and cried and just carried on. Probably went on for about 3 minutes or so. And you know what I did? I sat down. I sat with her. I didn't say a word. I just said, we're just going to sit. She cried her tears. She screamed her screams. And then minutes later, she was running to Uncle Kyle, swing her through the air like she saw me swing her sister. I learned something in that moment. My niece reacted because she was upset. She thought I was angry. She thought Uncle Kyle is being mean. He doesn't want me to have fun. He doesn't want me to be free. He doesn't want me to be a kid. And I said, no, it's not that I don't want you to be a kid. It's not that I don't want you to be free. It's that I understand our relationship is contingent upon the things we do for each other. The community of this household depends on us understanding sometimes we need correction, sometimes we need redirection, but I do not withhold compassion just because you have to be corrected. What she wanted in that moment was reconnection of relationship. What she needed to know was that even when you do something you ought not do, I'm still here with the power to pick you up and lift you up and to carry you beyond this moment. You might forget the moment of disobedience, but I will always remember the compassion on the other side. My friends, the children of Israel are instructive to me about our need for care and compassion, our need to understand that critique and correction cannot come without a deep care for one another. The question for me that my niece taught me is this: can we love each other through our low moments? Can I hold you through your healing process? Can I tarry with you while you work through your trauma? Because I know you're hurting, and I know you're upset, and I know you're afraid, and I know you're frustrated, but I'm here with you, and I'm not going anywhere. May the redirection of God be a reminder of our redirection, our reorientation to lives of love and compassion, the lives of community and connection, because even God gets fed up. And I know I do too. But on the other side of that reminder is the compassion of our covenant. As Gwendolyn Brooks said, we are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. It's true for the children of Israel. It's true for us.